Hi, welcome back to the Adobe stage. I'd like to welcome up someone that D&AD recently voted one of 50 most creative people of the year. She's the ECD and co-founder of Refinery 29. It's Piera Luisa Gelardi.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Hello to all of you beautiful, creative people. I'm really excited to be here in London speaking to you all. And today I'm going to talk to you about courageous creativity. But before we go there, I am going to open this imaginary door right here and invite you into my office. So come on in. My office is called the Peach Pit. And that is because of the peach-colored walls, the cozy womb-like interior, and also the fact that I am a child of the 90s and I love 90210. Oh, good, I got a couple laughs. I was worried that wouldn't land because I didn't know if 90210 had made it to this side of the pond. Anyway, the Peach Pit is a place where once a week I invite people from all over my company, Refinery 29, to join me. Anyone can sign up, whether they're in finance, editorial, or design, and they come to the Peach Pit, we share ideas, we help each other solve problems, and we hatch new concepts. And some key features of the Peach Pit are rosé, peach-flavored candies, and this crystal-covered buzzer that I was lovingly bedazzled. And this is kind of our nothing is impossible buzzer. So if you mention budget, bzzz, you get buzzed. If you mention traffic, bzzz, you get buzzed. So, and this isn't because, traffic and performance and budget are not considerations that are part of the creative process. They absolutely are. It's because in that environment, especially with a mixed group of people, some of whom don't necessarily think of themselves as creative, we want there to be no limitations. We want them to feel that anything is possible. I start every Peach Pit out the same way, and I'm going to ask you guys to join me in this warm-up today, because I'm sort of imagining this room is a very gigantic Peach Pit. So I'm going to ask you, if you're able to stand, please stand. If not, you can visualize or improvise. So try and make room between you and your neighbor. I don't want any injuries on my watch. Okay, so what we're going to do, this isn't a classic improv warm-up, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with the right leg, right arm, left leg, left arm, counting down from 4, so it's like 4, you don't have to do it yet. 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just kind of like shout your voice through that limb. And again, if you're not able to stand, just try and visualize. And so it's fine if you mess up. I mess up all the time. I'll probably be completely disoriented. I might knock one of these giant door knocker earrings onto the ground. It's all cool. We're just getting our yayas out. Okay, you guys ready? I didn't hear you. Are you guys ready? Okay. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 1, 1, 1, 1. Woo! Okay. Yes. Okay, you guys can sit. Did you guys feel your energy change? So why do we shake in the Peach Pit? We shake because it levels the playing field. I'm just as silly as you are. You're just as silly as I am. So let's just leave our inhibitions at the door. We shake because play creates trust. And we shake to get ourselves out of our heads and into our bodies so that we're just present in the room. I invited you to the Peach Pit to start off our conversation today because it embodies 3 key tenets of courageous creativity for me. The first, be the most you. When you leverage your unique personality and bring your strengths to the table, you can transform a boring brainstorm into a peach pit. The second, create the conditions for creativity. Creativity can be incredibly elusive. I know everyone in this room knows that. And it's so important to nurture it for yourself and for others. And the third, friction creates sparks. Having different people with different backgrounds in the room creates a really interesting mix of ideas and things rubbing up against each other, and that creates incredible creative results. So now that we've shaken it out together, I would love to introduce myself. So, hi, I'm Piera. I grew up in a small town in Maine, which is the northern United States, and this was my town square growing up, Cape Porpoise, population 1,000. As you can imagine, Friday nights were pretty lit. I grew up with amazing parents. My dad is an entrepreneur and engineer, and we grew up doing business brainstorms around the kitchen table at dinner time. And then my mom is a fierce feminist, a fierce lover of life, and a social worker who would read us feminist fairy tales at bedtime. As you can see, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. That's my brother and I. Our whole family also loves costumes. When I was a teenager, I found this window into another world through Sassy magazine, which was an incredible teen magazine that showed me that weird is cool and that it's amazing to get together with your girl gang and create content. And it was based in New York City, and I was just really obsessed with it. It sort of was my first love of, my first window into what it was that I might apply my creativity to later in life. And this was my girl gang in high school. This was my favorite outfit, and I'm not just, this was the prom, but I would wear this on a normal Tuesday also. Blue wig, blue sequin dress, white go-go boots. I might still wear that today, to be honest. And when I graduated high school, I knew I had to move to the birthplace of Sassy magazine, New York City, and I found myself there, and I was just so moved and so in awe of New York and just being surrounded by so much incredible, diverse, rich culture of all different kinds. And I kind of voraciously took that in, and I felt so at home. And it was that culture of New York that originally inspired myself and my three co-founders, Philip, Justin, and Christine, to launch Refinery 29. And Refinery 29 actually started as this sort of twinkle in our eye, a very tiny idea, which was to create a mall map, kind of the mall map of our dreams that could encompass all of these incredible independent boutiques in New York that brought into their spheres really individual and unique and diverse groups of style. So we launched with this map with 29 stores on it. And the media landscape at the time looked something like this. So a lot of articles about how to please your man, how to get flat abs, get beach body ready. And really these publications were selling this very false and very hollow aspiration of what it meant to be a woman. And as you guys can probably guess, my blue hair wig, like my blue wig wearing feminist fairy tales at bedtime self just wasn't buying that. I was raised to believe that I should aspire to learn a lot, to continue to grow, and to be the fullest, most badass version of myself. So when we started Refinery 29, we decided that we wanted to create content for a new generation of women who we wanted to feel they could bring their whole selves to the table and continue to grow and be enriched in their lives. So our mission at Refinery 29 is to be a catalyst for women to feel, see, and claim their power. So I want to show you guys a window into the women that we create content for and what we're making for them. So here we go. Buckle your safety belts. I hope we're going to have sound. My wish is my own
Feels a little bit
command.
stronger up here, kind of like a head crosswind. It's a little bit gusty, so maybe I'll be able to get a lull so we can get this off.
There's a bit of a crosswind over here. If it's windy where you're at, obviously, you don't need to jump.
Definitely your call.
To the day I swear the shit out every tear, every light. Anybody wanna dance with me? Sipping on my rum in the corner still. So we a groove to the morning break. Now we go banana in a sugar shake. Let's do it. Bring the bass up, make a blast a block. Select I'm gonna feed us with a well-cooked rock. See me, I'ma bend, see me swing. Ting tang and sing me like a sing-a-ling. I'ma twang my body till the problem's gone. Drop Baba juice, make a goddamn strong. See me rocking now, going tribal style. Dance like a chicken flap, tiger wild.
Oh shit. Ah! Yeah. Huzzah. That's what I'm talking about. Those are the women that we're creating content for. So I think there's moments when our idea of who we are and our sense of self gets challenged. And I had a moment like that as our company started to grow and develop, where I felt really comfortable in my role as a creative person, heading up creative projects and expressing myself, through creativity. But I started to feel really uncomfortable and almost like an alien in other parts of my role. So this executive and this creative director part of my identity were really split, and the executive part just felt so foreign. And I had a moment where I was, having to do a lot of things that I didn't necessarily have any background or training in. And, I had to start managing these big teams, and I had to start really thinking about business strategy, and I had to start doing a lot of negotiation. And I felt so uncomfortable in these new roles that I started to think that maybe our company was scaling and I wasn't the right person for the job anymore. And it was a really painful moment for me, because here I had built this company from the ground up, and I all of a sudden didn't feel at home anymore. But what I really realized is that sometimes, your idea of yourself, is not fixed. It's something that can evolve and grow. And that perhaps if I were able to take the strengths and unique skills that I had that really made me me, the things that I did well and with little effort, I could have more success in the areas that felt really foreign. I realized that if something doesn't fit, you can tailor it to fit you better. And the moment this really crystallized for me was when I learned to negotiate in my own style. And before that time, I sort of thought negotiation went something like this. Pick up the phone, fuck you, it's my way or the highway. Hang up the phone, yeah. Of course, that's like a major over-exaggeration, but you get the picture. I thought that you had to be uncompromising, that you really didn't, you had to sort of just not really be on the same page with the other person, and it felt really unlike me. But what I started to do was to negotiate something like this. First, I would start by painting a really clear picture using my imagination and my vision. So really describing the thing that I was going to create with the other person in a lot of rich detail, until that person was sort of nodding along and saying, yeah, I want to make that too. And then I would take a moment and use my skills of collaboration and listening, and I would say, very transparently, okay, I have X and you are asking for Y. Let's talk about how we're going to get, on the same page. And then I would bring in creativity. After I listened to what they said, I would use my creativity to come up with different solutions and put them on the table for them. And this felt really natural, really comfortable for me. And best of all, I started to exceed both the goals that were set for me and my own goals for myself in negotiation. And this was a pivotal moment because I realized that, you can bring your strengths almost like a safety blanket along with you into new areas. And it's not, your identity is not fixed. You can use those things that are comfortable as a weapon for those areas that are really feel more unnatural. So for me, being the most you has always been about staying true to your values, really knowing, what those values are for you, what those things that are non-negotiable that you want to bring into your life and your work, and sticking to those and kind of having those as your North Star. It's about trusting your intuition, using your gut to guide you. If it doesn't fit, tailor it to fit you better. You can use your unique strengths, your unique personality, to make things your own and to make yourself more comfortable in areas that you need to grow into. And remember that you're never done growing. Truly, my motto is forever forward, because I believe that we all have the capacity to grow every single day. And, so trust yourself and know that you can continue to evolve. So a few months ago, one of our creative directors came into my office, and she wanted to brainstorm a project that she was working on. So we sat down, and she briefed me on what she was working on, and I just started coming up with ideas. I was firing all these ideas off. We could do this, we could do that, blah, 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 do. And now I'm just scatting up here. I was throwing all these ideas out, and I looked at her face, and I thought she was going to be so excited because I was being so helpful. And instead, she looked completely downtrodden. And I said, Stella, is everything okay? What's going on? And she sighed, and she said, well, you're coming up with all these ideas, and that's really great. But when I had to brainstorm about this a couple hours ago, I had nothing. And, sometimes I wonder if I'm creative enough for this job. Oh, I felt for her in that moment. I mean, who here hasn't had a moment like that where you come up short, you start to doubt your own abilities, and you kind of spiral into this whirlpool of self-doubt? I know I've been there a million times. So I said to her, Stella, what were the conditions for your brainstorm? What was going on when you had to come up with these creative concepts? And she said, oh, well, our West Coast salesperson called me up, and she said, I need these ideas by end of day for the client. What do you got? I was like, okay. So someone put a gun to your head, said, dance, monkey, dance, and you ran out of dance moves. I mean, really not that surprising that that didn't yield a high creative result, right? I said to her, Stella, I've learned in my life that you need to create the conditions for creativity. You need to, really, especially when I have to brainstorm in a pinch, I need to, set myself up. So for me, that means surrounding myself with imagery. My office has photos all over it, or I'll, open up a Pinterest board. It means word association. That for me is unlocks a lot of ideas. So I'll open a magazine and just kind of go back and forth doing word association. But the biggest condition for creativity for me is bringing people into the room with me that I feel really comfortable with, who I know I can be myself around. And Stella, you're one of those people. I routinely bring you into my office when I need to brainstorm because you're one of my conditions for creativity. And I said, so it's really no wonder that I'm coming up with all these ideas right now, but you were stuck when you had to do your own brainstorm because you didn't have the conditions for yourself. And I think that's such an important thing to recognize, because so often we can become fixated on that moment of deficit, that moment when you don't have the idea, when you fall short. But what if you do the opposite? what if you follow that breadcrumb trail back from that moment when your brain was exploding with ideas, when you came up with something brilliant, and you figure out what were the conditions that led you there? Was it music that you were listening to? Did you take a walk around the block? Was it someone that was in the room with you? And then you can use those things as tools to set you up for success moving forward. Another condition for creativity for me is laughter. So in my first job, other than babysitting, which was at a small magazine called City, we would have the most amazing brainstorms. We worked above a bar, and in what I'm pretty sure was an illegal space. And we would all get together and have these brainstorms where they were just like raucous. Like people were throwing out the craziest stuff. And I would see this pattern emerge again and again and again. Someone would say something super ridiculous, very absurd. We would all bust out into fits of laughter, and then boom, a brilliant idea would follow along. And I truly believe that laughter unlocks a higher level of brilliance. So this is one of the stories that we would be brainstorming. This was a story we did with Bella Borsotti, balloon people modeling the season's hottest accessories. And yeah, so it just always be this pattern of laughter. And I think if anyone had seen us, had been a fly on the wall watching these brainstorms, they would have thought we were totally wasting time fucking around. But we weren't. We were being highly productive, I swear. The conditions for creativity, however, aren't always sunny. And a day that was really, really dark for me was the day after the election in the States. I woke up, I felt really, really heavy. I wanted to put on black and crawl into a hole. But a place of courage for me, somewhere where I derive a lot of strength, is my role as a leader. And I knew that I had to show up for my team on that day, truly more than any other. So I didn't put black on. I put on my pink power suit, and I went into the office and I said, you know what, today I'm going to work with the energy that's there, and I'm going to help people to turn pain into purpose. And so we set up this creative healing session. I know it sounds super hippy-dippy, and it was great. So we set up this session, and we talked about what people were feeling, what they were thinking. We talked about our audience, and we talked about how we could really facilitate dialogue with our audience and how we could turn that pain into purpose and do something really meaningful. And it was an incredible creative brainstorm. We took so many different actions from it that we're still rolling out to this day. And it led to the seeds of us working with the Women's March to create artwork with 30 different artists that brought to life some of the issues that we were marching for. And this was an incredible project. What we saw was that this artwork was shared virally by celebrities, by Hillary Clinton herself. We saw people marching with our signs everywhere from London to New York to Paris to Kosovo to Park City, Utah. And we were even on the cover of the New York Times. And we really just saw people resonating with this work that we created in a way that was meaningful. And I think that that's such an important thing, that sometimes when you walk into that uncomfortable place, when you embrace it and you find a way to, to channel it, you can tap into something so much greater than yourself. You can really, truly tap into the zeitgeist. So creating the conditions for creativity is really about, knowing what works for you and trying to replicate those things over and over again. Creativity is still elusive. It's not a sure bet, but, having some tools in your toolkit certainly doesn't hurt. Laughter unlocks brilliance. It's also good for your health, so I highly encourage it, bringing it into brainstorms. I try and be the one to say the most absurd thing first so that other people feel comfortable just going there. Do it for someone else. Sometimes thinking about, the audience that you're creating for, or your coworker that you really want to show up for, can help you to have the courage to do something that you might otherwise not do. And embrace the uncomfortable. You know, when you boldly walk into situations that are uncomfortable, when you embrace the fact that people around you are feeling feelings and having emotions and find ways to channel that, it can be truly powerful creatively. Okay, who's ready for the next section? I'm going to have a glass of water. Talk amongst yourselves. So friction creates sparks. Another moment of extreme friction for me was as we started to ramp up our content production as a media company. We got to this place where our editors needed the flexibility to write stories in real time, to be able to put up content without a lot of back and forth and approvals. And we started to see this thing happening where they were saying that creative is a bottleneck. And they were they were kind of like deciding to go around the creative process and pull a lot of their own stock images from stock sites. And at the time, and I think there's still ways to go, at the time, the stock landscape was really not reflective of our values as a brand. It was not reflective of the inclusivity and diversity and creativity of the Refinery 29 brand. So our site started looking like this slide that maybe some of you were like, what is this slide? This doesn't fit the rest of her presentation. Well, that's because our site started to just look really generic. And I was getting so frustrated. And again, I had a moment where I was like, well, maybe we're at this point where we're growing and people don't care about creative and I'm not gonna be like the right leader here. And I was talking to a friend and I was saying, everyone's saying that creative is a bottleneck, but like we need to control the brand and we need to keep the brand tight. And she was like, whoa, she's like, calm down, Sparky. And she said, isn't it interesting that, they're saying that creative is a bottleneck, and every time you talk about it, you're making this like throttling motion with your hands. And that kind of stopped me in my tracks. I was like, well, wow, you're very observant, and also that's true. So I started to think about, okay, what's another way of, of thinking about this problem? And what's another way of talking about this problem so I'm not reinforcing what everyone believes with my hand gestures and my language? So I started to talk about, the idea of creative guardrails. I said, okay, we just need to have some creative guardrails so you guys can drive as fast as you want on the highway, but you don't drive off the road. And I started to talk in that way and really use analogies of speed and efficiency so that I was reflecting back to other people what they were looking to get from us. And in this process, it really, in changing my language and changing the way I thought about it, the visualization that I had with it, it unlocked all of these different creative solutions. And one of those was to create our own stock imagery. So we decided that, if it didn't exist, we would build it, and we created our own stock imagery that was reflective of our diverse audience, reflective of our exuberant creativity as a brand, and that reflected women living their fullest lives. And what was amazing about that project is that, first of all, it completely transformed our site. It defined the solutions that we unlocked, really defined our creative and visual identity as a brand. But it also unlocked a bigger project. So we, in this past year, collaborated with Getty to create a larger collection. We said, you know what, it's not enough to just transform our own site in the way that we're representing women. We want to extend that to the industry as well. And so this collection's called the No Apologies Collection because we don't think women should have to apologize for who they are or what they look like. So friction creates sparks. To me, it's all about combating frustration with imagination. I am a true believer in visualization, and that, sometimes when you reframe the problem, you can unlock the solution. If you change, your language or visual, it really helps to free up your mind to think about things in a different way. And last of all, you can do it. I have told myself so many times, I can't do this, I need to quit, like maybe I'm not the right person for this. And you know what? I can do it. I've done it, I'm doing it, I'm up here doing it. So do you guys want to do something dorky with me? Yeah? No? Okay, I'm going to make you do it anyway, sorry. Okay, I'm going to say, you can do it, and you're going to say, I can do it. I'm so American. Okay, you can do it. I can do it. You can do it. I can do it. You can do it. I can do it. Great, you guys are amazing. It's true, you can do it. Okay, so I brought you guys in the Peach Pit, which is one of my favorite spaces. And I want to take you out with another one of my favorite spaces that I've created, which is called 29 Rooms. And 29 Rooms is our immersive funhouse of style, culture, and technology. We created it for our 10-year anniversary as a brand, and we're doing it for our 3rd consecutive year this September. And 29 Rooms reflects the key tenets of courageous creativity to me. So the first, be the most you. When we knew that we wanted to celebrate our 10-year anniversary, we started with a brainstorm about, what is the most us? So we went through brand values. We talked about, our brand values of inclusivity, imagination, possibility, creativity. We talked about our history as a brand, and we thought all the way back to that original mall map that we launched with. And we said, what if we created a space that brought our brand to life, IRL, and was in 29 different spaces, sort of reflecting that original map. And we can call it 29 Rooms. And we really, we came up with this idea. We could really see it in our minds, and we were so excited about it. So we moved on to, of course, pulling imagery and starting to flesh out the idea. And so we started to pull from, all different installation artists and museum exhibitions, and really thinking about what this experience could be. And we then went in to present to our executive team. And they were initially so excited about it, but then friction. You guys probably saw that coming. So they were excited about it, but then they said, well, this looks amazing, but it looks really, really expensive. And, I don't know if you guys have a solid enough monetization plan here. They said, this looks beautiful, but this looks like MoMA. How are we going to have that type of artistic credibility for our experience? And they said, this looks really cool, but it looks huge and ambitious. How are we as a digital brand going to get people to come to an event during New York Fashion Week? And then someone dropped the bomb. They said, I think we should just have a cocktail party. But at this point, I know friction creates sparks, so I said, great feedback. We'll come back to you. So we took those notes and we said, okay, monetization. We are going to work with some of the best brands in the world to bring their brands to life through these rooms in a way that they haven't shown up before. So we worked with Disney and created a Minnie Mouse tornado stop motion room. We worked with Ford and made this beautiful neon jungle where they could display their eco-friendly model. And we worked with Michael Kors to create this street as a runway room, and many more of the best brands. We said, okay, artistic credibility. Well, our brand has always been about celebrating independent makers, so we're going to work with different artists on each of these rooms to bring them to life and to collaborate on their artistic vision. And we worked with a huge range of people from Adwoa Aboah to Nicola Formichetti to Tinashe to Solange and her record label St. Heron, and brought their visions and messages to life in this space. And lastly, we said, okay, URL to IRL, how are we going to get people there? Well, we're going to turn this into the most spectacular Instagram playground, and social media is going to be our driver for getting audience there. And this experience really went viral. We reached 1 in 2 people on Instagram last year with this event. We had over 10,000 people come through. And most meaningful to me was the response that we had from the audience. People coming through said, after going through this experience, I realized it was time for me to start dreaming bigger. They said, 29 Rooms made me feel creative. And this past weekend, you helped thousands of people get lost, even if just for an hour, in the hope and positivity of creation and expression. And that's the thing about courageous creativity. When you are courageously creative, you create more courageous creativity in the world. Courageous creativity is contagious. So you are creative, you are courageous. Now go out there and spread that shit. I'm going to leave you the way we did our guests at 29 Rooms. We made our dream world. Now go make yours. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Oh.
Thanks, Piera.
Yeah.
Thanks. Absolutely brilliant, really inspiring. Before we go to questions in the room, I think it's amazing, such a wealth of inspiration of how we can access our creative and our creative processes and our creativity. Would you be able to talk us through your creative process? So perhaps choosing one project and then actually how these concepts sort of manifest themselves in a real work.
Yeah. Well, funny you should ask, but I have a special hidden slide for you. So I put this in, like, my presentation designer, and I put this in here, which kind of walks you through my creative process. So I don't know if anyone can relate, but my creative process goes something like this, like inspiration, like preparing for this talk, like I did a brainstorm, and I have all these Post-its and all these ideas, and then I'm like organizing them. Then I go through, like, the majority of the project is the teeth gnashing and freak out portion of the project. So this is like me texting my assistant, like, why did I sign up for this? I must be crazy. I don't like public speaking. Why am I putting myself out there? And like, maybe this isn't, I just go through like a whole thing, and then I go to breakthrough. And I think that's sort of like for any creative project, that's sort of my process, is like I have the idea and it feels really solid, and then that middle portion where you're actually like working through all the bits and pieces, like 29 Rooms too. It was like we saw it so clearly in our minds, and what we created was truly what I saw at the beginning. But that middle phase, when you're really sorting out like all the practical considerations, and like you start to second guess, like, is this a good idea? Is this, like, with the 29 Rooms project, it was like, I shortened the friction part down, but that was something that truly almost didn't happen and there was so much friction and so much that we needed to figure out that, you get to a point sometimes when you're like, is this friction because I'm just working through the hard part of the project, or is it, sometimes you wonder like, oh, is this happening because this isn't actually a good idea? So I always find the middle stage of a project, like, it's both exciting because it's a making piece, but it's also like there's a lot of teeth gnashing involved in it for me because I also play my own devil, kind of like my own devil's advocate. Like, I have that side of myself, and I do think it makes me a stronger creative person because I'm thinking about, kind of all these different angles and like all these holes that people could poke, and questioning myself and questioning the project and the idea in all these ways. But then I feel like at the end, that gets it to a stronger creative place, and then you end up knowing that you have, poked all these holes in the thing, and it's still alive. So then it's kind of like the breakthrough.
Yeah. Do we have any questions from the floor? Yes, that's a burning question. There's a microphone coming your way.
Grab this water quickly.
Hello. Yes. Okay. Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask you, what do you think the key qualities are to have as a leader in a creative context? Because you're obviously, in charge of a whole company. And
Sorry, I can't hear you super well.
What are the key qualities that you think leaders need to have within creative contexts?
Yeah, I think everyone's different, so I truly do believe it's about playing to your strengths and for example, my conditions for creativity are certainly not everyone's, and my style of leadership, is relying on my strengths. So I don't think it's necessarily reflective of anything universal, and I think that's the most important thing, is that I don't think that there's a universal way of being or right way of being. It's more about leaning into your strengths. But what I've found is really successful for me as a creative leader is the power of listening. I don't think the leader's voice has to be the loudest voice in the room. And I have gotten, most of my best ideas in conversation with other people, listening to other people's opinions, and having a true connection. So for me, that's something that's really important. I think creating an environment where people feel comfortable voicing their ideas. If you create an environment where people are scared of the leader, or the leader tends to shoot them down, I think then you have all these smart, creative people around you, but you're not actually utilizing to the best of their ability. So creating that environment, I think, is really important. And I think understanding helping other people to understand what works best for them, and helping them to kind of create those conditions. So, having a degree of flexibility in the workplace versus one set way of doing things, I think can help you to work with different people's unique strengths and what brings out the best in different individuals.
Oh, we have another question there. Thanks.
Thanks. What would you say is your proudest moment in your career so far?
My proudest memory?
Yeah.
Well, I do think when we opened 29 rooms the first year, that was just an incredible moment for me. It was the biggest project that I've ever worked on, and it was really, really challenging on so many levels to birth it. It truly felt like being in creative labor. And because it was this immersive environment, so going into that space, realizing that I had gone from this idea in my head to really manifesting that, in real life, and then seeing people interact with it in the way that we had designed it to be interacted with, and feel about it the way that we had talked about it. I think that's really something that makes me proud, is when the intention that you put into a project is reflected back to you in the way that people talk about the work that you've done. To me, that's the highest gauge of success, is when you can truly, without telling someone what they should think or feel, they have that reaction to your work.
Do we have any questions from over here? Yes, thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
What's your advice for someone who works in an industry where their creativity doesn't match, per se, their job?
In what way?
I feel like I'm wildly creative, but for the tone of the brand that I work for, I find myself having to curtail that sometimes. And maybe if you have advice to kind of channel that.
Yeah, I think, so two things. One, I think we all have clients and certain briefs that we have to fit into. So sometimes it's recognizing that creativity takes many forms, and sometimes your own style might not come through, but perhaps your way of thinking can be translated creatively. Perhaps your way of problem solving, that challenge is the way that you manifest your creativity. So I think it's knowing that there's a lot of practicalities within certain projects and certain work environments that you can work around and kind of bring other bits of your creativity to life within. If you feel totally stifled, that's another thing, and that might mean starting to think about the environment where you feel you'll really flourish creatively. I think the other thing that is so important is so many people put so much emphasis on like living out their whole, their whole being and all their hopes and dreams into their career. I mean, you also see that happen in people's relationships where you just think like, this is gonna be my everything. And I don't think that's realistic. Like even in my job, I mean, I have my dream job for all intents and purposes, but it's not my everything. There's other places that I need to go to get, to nurture other parts of my creativity and other parts of my being. And I think knowing that you can do that, I have a friend who's a really successful artist, showing at museums like all of the check marks are there for, successful artists. But he told me that he actually got so much, got the most fulfillment from creating his art when he worked at a vintage store during the daytime and he would go home and make his artwork at night. And I think that's an important thing. I think our society and our culture sort of emphasizes that your career defines you. The first question you ask people when you meet them, you say, oh, what do you do? But we're all like whole, robust people, so you can find that fulfillment in other places, and like I think that that's really enriching. Like I took an improv class this year. I won't shut up about it because for me it was just amazing to like learn that other skill and it kind of stretch this other muscle. So I highly encourage, like if you're feeling that way, to perhaps think about some classes or things that you want to explore on the side, or a project that you want to do just for yourself that might help you to kind of scratch that itch.
Thank you.
My very long-winded answer.
That was great. It was great. I think everyone could benefit from a bit of that. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but thank you so much,
Yeah,
Piera.
thank you guys. Thanks so much. Cool, where do I leave this here?
Thank you. We're just going to pause on this stage for 2 minutes, so don't go anywhere. We're going to, in 2 minutes, we'll have expert digital storyteller and film woman Anna Hicks. So, yes.